Good Friday morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing. We'll look at weather conditions coming up for the next 7 days, weather and an emphasis on burning. Precipitation over the past 2 weeks. You can see on the left-hand side, it has been bone dry across western and central Nevada into parts of southwestern Idaho. Even that first shade of blue that you see there is just a few hundredths of an inch, which for a 2-week period in October is much below normal. The only wet areas that had over a half inch of rain during this period, far southern areas, and a scattering up into the mountains of Utah and western Wyoming. On the right-hand side, you can see the percent of normals, darker red indicating 0 to 5% of normal. As you can see how much drier we've been over the western portion of the Great Basin. This could be an issue as we get a stronger wind event and some dry, light fuels across the Sierra front as we go into Sunday into Monday. New snowfall over the past 24 hours, just some light amounts here, a few inches here in the Tetons in Wyoming. Snow cover still lingering just a few inches across the highest elevations of the Uintas and the highest terrain of western Wyoming as well. Otherwise, just some scatterings on the peaks. Satellite imagery shows a high-pressure ridge building in with clear skies, dry conditions. However, it's this trough of low pressure dropping down from the Gulf of Alaska, which will likely bring a cool down, also increasing winds from west to east as we go through the end of the weekend and into next week. So on the left-hand side, looking at the upper level map, we do notice that high pressure is building in. You see by these tannish shades through here. Also looking at deep moisture across the Pacific Northwest. That's where it's going to stay for the next 2 or 3 days. It's going to be this high pressure ridge building in, and eventually the winds, these tight packing of these yellow height lines with the low pressure trough, which will be our main weather feature. But for the rest of today, fairly poor dispersion across Nevada and in the areas in red, getting steadily better across Idaho and Wyoming, where you see those shades in the white. We can see why when we look at Friday itself. Transport winds wise here on the left hand side, very light winds across Nevada, but seeing some of this green here, transport winds of 10 to 20 miles per hour across the higher terrain of the Wasatch Uintas, slightly higher than that across eastern Idaho, and much higher across western Wyoming, gusts over 30 miles per hour. Some pockets of poor vertical mixing across western Nevada, but getting steadily better, a few thousand feet above ground level as you get further to the east and to the north. Now looking at Saturday, there is on the left-hand side that low pressure trough dropping down and deepening. See these tight yellow height lines dropping on in. So we'll start to see winds increase. Notice the dispersion gets better here. Very few areas in the red. We see more yellow, more white. That indicates good overall dispersion. And you see the winds here on the left-hand side across the high Sierra, a few orange specks along with the dark green. Those are winds of perhaps 20 to 30 miles per hour. Not much yet across the Great Basin itself, but it'll start increasing later on in the day. Still some gusty winds across eastern Idaho and western Wyoming, gusts over 30 miles per hour, and moderately good transport winds across the higher terrain of central and eastern Utah. Vertical dispersion a few thousand feet above ground level in most areas. Now on Sunday, the trough low pressure surges on through. See the tight packing these height lines. No high pressure ridge in sight, so good overall mixing both vertically and horizontally. But for burning conditions, perhaps too much of a good thing with these tight winds. Could see some critical winds. Notice the dispersion looks really good. Lots of areas in the white. And here are the winds themselves. So looking here in the orange and the purple shades, seeing a lot of these wind gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour across the Sierra front, northern Nevada, southern Idaho. A lot of these areas have still some dense brush, which has dried out considerably over the past 2 to 3 weeks. So there is the threat of possibly, if there is an ignition, of maybe getting some wind, at least during the daytime, windy time of day. Good overall vertical mixing. The National Weather Service has issued a fire weather watch. You can see it here in this tannish shade through here right along the Sierra front, and that is for Sunday. Looking at the Utah Clearing Index for burning purposes, you can see overall good conditions in the green, yellow, and orange shades across the higher terrain of central and eastern Utah. fairly poor conditions across the desert areas to the west, but that'll be improving as we go through Saturday and Sunday. As high pressure breaks down and low pressure moves in, more and more areas should see better dispersion conditions. Overall, 3-day precipitation totals pretty bone dry across the Great Basin, except for the higher terrain of central Idaho and western Wyoming, where 1/10 to locally 1/4 of an inch of precipitation may fall, but we do stay dry for the most part. So we go into Monday. Notice the dry air still in place, windy, a bit more of a northwest tilt to the wind here. Moisture to the north across parts of Idaho, western Wyoming. Excellent overall dispersion here on the right-hand side, no problems there. And we should have very little problems with dispersion the next few days as we're into trough low pressure, breezy conditions. Showers will be sliding out of Idaho and Wyoming and out towards portions of northern Utah. Excellent dispersion here, almost all areas in the white. Clouds increase across Nevada and Utah on Wednesday and deepen across Idaho and Wyoming. Colder air also, so not just showers, but also mountain snows. Snow levels will vary, maybe starting around 7,000 feet, but could drop a little lower as you head into the midweek period. Continues on Thursday. So overall, the next 7 days, especially into next week, will be on the cooler side, about 10 to 20 degrees cooler than it has been in some areas. Overall precipitation, again, not much in southern areas, more across central and northern areas. Looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook, as we go into November 2nd through the 8th, so basically the first week of November, warmer than normal across a good portion of the Great Basin, at least the western and central portions, near normal elsewhere. Near to slightly above normal precipitation, so some showers possible during this time period. And this concludes our briefing. Have a great day. Our next briefing will be this coming Monday.